A sweltering night in Manila, 2002, four gunshots tear through a rented apartment, and a young British businessman never wakes up. The person who sent the killers up those stairs was not a stranger. It was the wife he adored, the girl he once saved. He called her his princess. She sat outside, engine running, waiting for the shots. How does a love story end in an execution? Stay with me. Only a mother truly knows what it means to bury a child. For one woman in Nottingham, a piece of her soul went dark that day, and the ache never once stopped gnawing at her. Her name is Margaret. The man in the coffin was her son, Stephen, and the woman she would chase across the world for 2 long years was his widow, Evelyn. But before any of this, there was just a gentle, blonde young man who told terrible jokes and let his crooked grin do the punchline. The kind of person, everyone swears, who would never hurt a soul. He grew up in Nottingham with 2 younger sisters. Then, when Stephen was just 14, an accident took his father, and everything about the boy changed overnight. The playful brother became the responsible one, quietly shouldering the household, determined to look after his mother and his sisters. Life grew a little lighter when Alan came along. He stepped into a father's role and gave Stephen back some of the boyhood he had sacrificed trying to be so good for everyone else. He was never one for parties or pubs. Stephen buried himself in computers instead, certain that machines and code were the whole shape of his future. While Stephen landed his first computer job in Nottingham, a very different childhood was unfolding on the far side of the planet. Evelyn came from Dharamsimha, a remote Philippine island you can only reach by boat. No running water, no electricity, no sanitation, just the sea and the sun. As a girl, she was quiet and well-behaved, staying close to home. When her father fell ill, she did the washing and wove mats to sell for a few coins. Chatter came easily to her, right from her earliest years. Whenever anyone asked about her future, she would flash a smile and answer that her plan was to work as a bar girl, hoping it might one day lead to marrying an American. At 21, Stephen was handed the chance of a lifetime. A computer firm offered to triple his salary if he traded Nottingham for Hong Kong. Margaret pushed him to go. Her son was clever and capable, she thought, and the world was his for the taking. What she could not see was how unready he was for it. He had grown up close to his mother, maybe too close. He had never really been on his own, and, as those who knew him would say, Stephen simply did not see evil coming. In Hong Kong, he took up flying, joining a club in Angeles City in the Philippines, just 2 hours away. It was a playground for professionals, and everywhere he looked, there were beautiful women. The big blonde Englishman with the pale face and the ready smirk was a hit. He made people laugh, and the women were drawn to him. Evelyn, meanwhile, had already left home to chase her own future. She was only 13 years old. Her mother wept as she went. The child said she had no choice. They were poor, she insisted, and someone had to earn. 2 days by boat and bus carried her to Angeles City, a place the world had nicknamed the sex capital of the Philippines. For girls from the villages, its bars were the fastest way to send money home. Most of them lied about their age to get through the door. In some of these bars, the girls were as young as 12. £1 a night to dance, up to £5 to sleep with a customer, and a higher price still for virgins, the girls they called cherry girls. The bar owner always took the biggest cut. She was ashamed of the work. She said she had been forced into it, and that she leaned on drugs just to get through the nights. For a girl trapped like this, there was really only one exit: a rich boyfriend. And one hot night, Evelyn's escape walked straight through the door. Stephen fell for her the very moment he saw her. Back home, when he told his family he had met a girl in one of the bars, Margaret pictured an ordinary English pub. She had no idea. He took her out for the night, then paid the bar owner £500 so she would never have to come back. In his mind, he had just rescued her. For Evelyn, the appeal was simple. Steve was kind, he was handsome, he was young like her, and she never forgot to mention he had plenty of money. Margaret was quietly devastated to learn her son had paid for a prostitute, and yet, standing in that world, she understood. So many of those girls were beautiful and undeserving of their fate, and Stephen believed saving even one made it right. They finally met in Hong Kong. Evelyn was just 17, a full 10 years younger than Stephen. She was quiet, polite, and, Margaret admitted, completely charming. Then came the surprise. Stephen married her, but the ceremony had to pause because the bride could not read her own vows. Evelyn had never set foot in a school. Margaret asked her son if he truly knew what he was doing. Marrying a bar girl was one thing. Marrying one so young from such crushing poverty struck her as questionable judgment. But Stephen felt safe. He was the provider. He held the purse strings, and he was sure that without him, Evelyn had nothing. And so she would never leave. That certainty would prove to be his blind spot. Margaret and Alan were even invited on the honeymoon to the tropical island of Porto Galera. What Margaret watched there quietly troubled her. Stephen loved her with everything he had, but when he reached for Evelyn's hand as they walked, she would pull her shoulder away. Little things, the kind only a mother notices. Evelyn sensed the doubt too. She told Stephen that his mother did not want them married, and Stephen just answered that he loved her and that she would be the mother of his children. Then the children arrived. A daughter, Jessica, came first, and a boy, Joshua, followed her by 2 years. At last, Stephen had the family he had always longed for. The family settled in Angeles City, the very place where Evelyn had once danced for £1 a night. Only now she was living in another world entirely. The house they rented sat in the priciest part of town. With Stephen earning £60,000 a year, he set aside £1,000 for Evelyn each month, hers to spend as she pleased. Maids handled the housework and the children. Margaret grumbled that his wife was lazy, lying in bed all day. Stephen only smiled and said she did not have to lift a finger. She was his princess. But Evelyn was changing. She carried herself like someone rich now, forever talking about money and looking down on the very relatives she had come from. The money reshaped her whole island too. Stephen sent enough for her parents to buy a fishing boat and build the only brick house in the entire village. When relatives visited, things vanished. Pillows, light bulbs, the rice cooker, even the water filter. Evelyn never blinked. "We will just buy more," she would tell Stephen. Margaret and Alan came out once a year, video camera always rolling, and their lens kept catching the same thing. Evelyn, thumbs flying over her phone, whispering and giggling to someone the second she thought no one was near. Towards Stephen, she had turned cold, often angry, sometimes openly aggressive. Something in the marriage had quietly rotted. Gina, Evelyn's own sister, had come to live with them as nanny to the children. It was Gina's questions about the gossip that finally broke her. Evelyn admitted it. There was another man, and her marriage to Stephen was falling apart. The man was a local security guard named Analda Dory. He earned £1,000 a year, the same figure Evelyn burned through every single month. To the camera, Evelyn denied it flatly. There was no affair, she insisted. She could not understand why anyone would think of her that way. Stephen's suspicions were sharpening. Money kept disappearing. He had paid for Jessica's private nursery, so one day he decided to take his little girl in himself, packed lunch in hand. None of the staff recognized the girl, and Jessica had never once been enrolled there. When Stephen last spoke to his mother, his voice was full of defeat. He told her that Evelyn had gone too far this time, that she had even taken her wedding ring to a pawn shop. Only later would the truth land. Evelyn had been quietly funding her boyfriend all along. The rent money, it turned out, had bought him a motorbike. Stephen began drifting away himself, back to the bars and clubs of his bachelor days. Friends say it was not an affair, just one-night stands. With no intimacy left at home, he looked for it elsewhere, staying over at his friend Mike's place. This footage was the final home video Stephen ever made, captured only weeks ahead of his death. From the outside, the family still appeared almost intact. Even so, he was still trying to hold the marriage together. He laid out his conditions to Evelyn: give back the money that had gone missing, and either find work or enroll in college. Nothing shifted, and so he finally spoke the word he had always dreaded: divorce. For Evelyn, divorce meant one terrifying thing: a return to the bar. Back to selling herself to strangers, or back to the poverty of the province, after years of living like a queen. Then Stephen cut off her allowance completely. Suddenly, Evelyn could no longer bankroll the sprawling web of family and friends who had come to depend on her. Friends warned Stephen to be careful, that some of these people were dangerous. He laughed it off. They would never hurt him, he said. He was the golden goose. And a friend reminded him with a grin of how that old story really ends. They kill the golden goose. Margaret and Alan would replay their last holiday together forever, because that goodbye was different. Not a see you soon, but a final farewell. And Margaret is certain to this day that Evelyn already knew. On the 18th of July 2002, the phone rang in Nottingham. Alan was out in the garden. Margaret picked up and heard Mike's voice, and the world tilted. She kept saying it could not be true, he could not be dead, not Stephen, but he was. At the Manila apartment, the two men kept for their work. Stephen and Mike had settled in for the night. Sleep ended abruptly for Mike when three men shoved their way through the door. One pressed a pistol to his temple and asked if he was the man they had come for. Told no, the gunman turned and walked into the room where Stephen lay sleeping. Mike heard a shout, Steve's voice, and then 3 or 4 shots all at once. Then came the sound of feet racing down the stairs. Mike reached Stephen, who lay motionless, and searched for a pulse that was not there. He rushed to the neighbors and phoned the police, and out loud he voiced what every instinct was telling him: that woman had killed him. In his mind, that woman was Evelyn. There was no evidence, only suspicion. Even Margaret struggled to believe it. Arrogant, yes. Ignorant, maybe. But a murderer? She simply could not picture it. Margaret flew straight to the Philippines. At the funeral parlor, Evelyn stayed seated as they walked in. She never came to the coffin. She never shed a single tear. As Margaret stood beside her lifeless son, Evelyn came out with something odd, asking whether anyone had seen Mike. Again and again she insisted Mike must have known the attackers, that the fault somehow lay with him. It was then that Margaret reached for her notebook. The police crawled. Their first theory pointed at Stephen's company, but at his office every employee called him a good man, a good boss. The investigators hit a blank wall. So Margaret took over. She would not fly home until she had the truth. She hired her own private investigator, a former policeman, and put Evelyn under round-the-clock surveillance. Two men had been regular callers at the house. One of them was the man Evelyn had been seeing. The other was his companion, also employed as a security guard. When Margaret showed their pictures to the police, Mike went cold, recognizing the eyes of the man who had nearly shot him. Both were taken into custody. But the questions Margaret kept asking were pulling danger closer to her and Alan. The men on trial had associates who understood exactly who this couple was. After 2 months, word reached them that it was time to leave. Even so, Margaret refused to depart empty-handed. She had her heart set on taking Stephen's children. She talked Evelyn into letting Jessica stay over for the weekend. A few days after that, she flew to England carrying her 3-year-old granddaughter. Joshua, however, was nowhere to be found. Walking away from that baby, she admits, remains the most painful thing she has ever had to do. By the time she flew out, she had ticked off half her list. Jessica, safe. The passports. Stephen's ashes, carried in her hand luggage. 2 men behind bars. And a woman utterly, bone-deep exhausted. Joshua remained on the island in the care of Evelyn's parents. Margaret dispatched her investigator to fetch the boy, promising £200 to whoever brought him to her. The other grandmother wept, but she let him go. Margaret had money, she reasoned, and money meant schooling, and a future the island could never give him. By the following day, Joshua had reached England, and Margaret was waiting for her grandson at Heathrow. He turned up dressed in men's socks, a baby girl's outfit with the legs snipped off, and a British Airways nappy. To finally hold Stephen's son, she says, made all of it worthwhile. Both children now live with Margaret and Alan. Evelyn has not seen either of them in 2 years, and from the far side of the world, Margaret set out to prove her daughter-in-law was a killer. For 2 years, she gave herself to it daily, frequently right through the night, and it drained her savings dry. At one point, she even covered the police's fuel costs so they could go and question witnesses. In the end, her spending reached £55,000. The breakthrough came from Evelyn's own family. Margaret and Alan had befriended them and stayed in touch by text. Mother to mother, they promised to help her find the truth. It all came down to a single figure, Robin Bautis, husband to Evelyn's sister Gina, which made him family by marriage. From the night of the killing, his conduct had seemed off, and as soon as investigators came looking for him, he vanished from sight. His whereabouts were known to Evelyn's aunts, and Margaret talked them into handing him over. With nowhere left to run, Robin admitted everything. He had been the third intruder that night, and once he spoke, the entire account unraveled. Around 11 that night, he said, Evelyn asked him to come along. He climbed into the car with no idea where they were headed, and they drove downtown. Evelyn, her lover, and the friend drove to the flat where Mike and Stephen slept. The 3 men climbed the stairs. Her lover raised the gun. 2 shots, then 2 more. And Evelyn's part? She sat in the car keeping watch. To anyone who would listen, she had boasted that Stephen was a millionaire and that his death would leave every penny of his fortune to her. Robin's confession sealed it. Evelyn's lover and his accomplice were convicted of murder, both handed life sentences. Robin himself walked free in exchange for his testimony. By February 2004, Evelyn found herself under arrest and facing charges. She had never so much as touched the gun, yet the law permitted a murder conviction if the court decided she and her lover had schemed together to end her husband's life. The evidence stacked up against her. The intruders had held a key to the flat. A neighbor testified to seeing Evelyn return in the small hours, contradicting her claim that she had been asleep, and not a single witness came forward to support her account. In Makati City Jail, she waited on remand for 7 months. The only person who came to see her was her father. Everyone else had turned against her, some even testifying that they had heard her plotting Stephen's death for his money. The children, meanwhile, were building a new life. They point to a star in the English night, and Margaret tells them, "Yes, that one is your daddy," and it breaks her every time. Anyone found guilty of murder in the Philippines faces a savage sentence, from spending the rest of their days behind bars to being hanged. The day for reading out the verdict had finally come, and Margaret was determined to sit inside that courtroom for it. She had butterflies, she admitted. 2.5 years of relentless days had led to this single morning. If the verdict went the right way, it would finally let her breathe. With no family and no friends left to comfort her, the only person in Evelyn's corner was her lawyer, as the court came to session. People of the Philippines against Evelyn Davis. The room fell silent as the judge began to read. The finding was murder proven beyond reasonable doubt, made worse by treachery. For this, the court handed Evelyn Bohol the sentence of reclusion perpetua. She escaped the death penalty, yet received the harshest term available. 40 years behind bars with no chance of being released early. For Margaret, there was no triumph in it. Nothing, she said, would ever bring her son back. And there was no pleasure at all in watching Evelyn led to prison. One final task remained for her, to confront Evelyn and say her farewell. She told Evelyn to get to her feet, to remove the glasses and meet her gaze. Her daughter, she said, wept for her, and so did her son, yet Evelyn had no wish for either of them. Evelyn would not bend. She had done nothing wrong, she insisted. She was there when Stephen died. She never had a relationship with that man. Even if she died right now, she said, Stephen was the best man in her life. Margaret called her a foolish girl. Stephen had loved her, and so had her children, she said, and yet here they all were. Evelyn's only response was to insist over and over that she was innocent. Just before she went, Margaret let her guard down for a single moment. From behind the bars, Evelyn pleaded with her to look after the children, to watch over Jesse and Joshua for good. Margaret gave her word that the two would grow up knowing their mother had been beautiful. Then she asked Evelyn to stand and say goodbye. Evelyn would not move, so Margaret turned and walked out, leaving a marriage, a family, and a life in ruins behind her. Margaret told her she would end up an old woman whose life had been thrown away. She had held everything, she reminded her. Stephen had called her his princess and had given her all the love he had. "You took my son," she said. "Now I have yours and your daughter, who one day will ask why. Why, Mummy? Why were you so bad and left us and killed our daddy?" She said she only hoped that trading her family away had been worth so brief a romance with a door eye. Evelyn's reply was a single line, that Margaret was no longer any daughter of hers. A boy who told bad jokes, a girl who dreamed of escape, a love that curdled into money, betrayal, and murder. 2 children now grow up chasing a father in the stars, and a mother who traded them all for a security guard on a motorbike.